Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which of course is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Adrian.
Hey there.
And today we've got another show and tell, which is what, Adrian?
That's where I have not seen the movie and Garrett has, and Garrett has seen the movie and I have not. So, or whichever way it goes, but one of us have not seen the movie and we share and show the other movie. So, basically each one of us is watching a new movie for the first time and the other person is kind of having that conversation about what they thought about it versus what this new person watching it has. So, it's always a fun one. I feel like we always have some very, very interesting opinions on these ones.
Absolutely. Basically, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. That is the theme of the episode. But today we've got two very different movies, as is usually the case for the show and tell. We have a 1980s nostalgic film and a 2008 kind of survival horror-y type film. But all this and more will be coming up on the drive back. Alrighty, and we're back with another show and tell. We've got two very different movies this time. Adrian, I'm guessing, like me, you watched both of these this week. Was it kind of a roller coaster going from one to the other?
Yes, one, I would say neither of them are, without any spoilers, like incredible to me, but one I definitely found more enjoyable than the other. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead. And we're going to start off with the one that I put forward, which is The Dark Crystal. Released in 1982, it was directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz and stars Jim Henson, Catherine Mullen, and Frank Oz. On another planet in the distant past, a gelfling embarks on a quest to find the missing shard of a magical crystal and to restore order to his world. So, I put forward this movie because I was mostly interested in what you were going to say. This usually I tend, whenever we come to like show and tells like these, I always tend to pick something that's like on the IMDb 250 or something that's considered a classic or something that's very highly rated that you haven't seen before. But this was a little bit different. I was just so curious to see what you had to say. And as the first time watching The Dark Crystal, what did you think?
Yeah, first off, I'll say I really enjoyed kind of watching something that I had heard about, but wasn't like universally renowned. I never really know what to add to those, so it was nice to watch something that was like very much like, okay, I know it exists, but I don't know really much about it, and I did not like this movie at all.
Yeah.
The saving grace is the puppeteering and the set production, and I guess the cinematography. But the rest of this movie is not enjoyable for me. It is extremely slow. In terms of normal pacing, even for a slow movie, it's slower than that. So, yeah, I found this one definitely more of a chore to get through. After like the first 20 minutes, I kind of settled in that like, okay, now I'm just watching this because I have to.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's honestly, I think this is one of the first times we'll have to go back and kind of see, but I think we pretty much, well, I would say I enjoyed the movie more than you do, it sounds like, but I completely agree. I think that this movie is very slow. It is very... It's kind of weird because it is a fantasy-ish film. It's a kind of a stretch, maybe sci-fi a little bit, but it takes these two of the most interesting genres and makes a film that just isn't that interesting. Which is,
Yeah,
it really
it had
sucks.
all the pieces. It's got all the gears. It's got all the machinery to make a really iconic film. And I don't want to say it's not iconic. I feel it's definitely a cult classic for a lot of people. But yeah, it just doesn't come together well. It just isn't it.
But we'll dive a little bit more into that when we go over the spoilers. But if you would like to watch The Dark Crystal, unfortunately, since I said it last week, it is not on Netflix. It is on HBO Max, so you can watch it through there. The prequel series, Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, is on Netflix, but the original movie is on HBO Max. So if you do want to check it out, that is where you're going to have to go. So now that we'll get the spoiler warning out of the way for The Dark Crystal, I completely agree. I think this movie had all of the building blocks. It has the production design. It has the puppet work. It has the costuming, the set design, everything. All of the technical aspects of this film, maybe except for the writing, which we'll get to. The technical behind, like the conceptual work, like the designs, the sets, the puppets, everything is masterclass level. But it really falls apart when it comes to the editing, the pacing, and the writing.
Yeah, and I think those are the key things that you can make a poorly shot film engaging if you have those three things on lock.
Yeah.
Those three things can make or break your movie, and they broke it in this sense. The writing is atrocious for like half the movie. I one of the scenes that I was referencing when I was talking about it is right at the beginning when the Gleefling is about to take off on his journey, and he goes, "But I can't go alone." And then, I'm not joking, the scene just stays there for like 15 seconds of it, like everything, no one's moving.
The horizon.
And then he goes, "Alone I must." And then that's it. And it's like, cool, goodbye. Let's just move on with this.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah, like it just seems like they had this really weird, like, I mean, I'm all fine for internal dialogue, but it just felt clunky a lot. Like it felt like the writing was like, I don't know if they were playing around with the script during filming or what, but it seemed like it was changing and it felt weird. Like mid-sentence, it felt like a new writer took over for a certain scene or something like that. It was just odd.
I think would this really, and I could be wrong, I don't know any of the kind of behind the scenes story with this. I don't know any kind of trivia, which I should have looked some up before this. But I feel like this was mostly a conceptual thing. I feel like Jim Henson and Frank Oz had this vision for something to be made into a film. And I'm talking the vision specifically like visually, like the design, the puppets, the way they move, that was there. But then like they got to actually the point of making the film and they're like, oh, what's the story? And it almost feels like the story is influenced by the puppets. It's influenced by the world around it and not something more natural as in like I've written this story to present to you.
Yeah, it feels like the story definitely came afterwards. It's a super generic fantasy quest storyline that has... they try to have twists, but they're nowhere near shocking enough to add any depth to the actual plot. It just feels super linear. And I would completely agree. I think the story felt like it was limited by the concept instead of the other way around. Like, I think what would have made a better film is if the concept was struggling to keep up with such an amazing story or premise.
Yeah.
And it really felt the other way around, and I think it's just worse off for that.
Yeah, and I you know what, I know this probably isn't the best selling point, but I'd be interested to see what you have to say about the Netflix show, because it has more time to tell a story. Which,
I mean, the way that I feel about Disney Plus's slow burn Star Wars shows right now, I don't know what pacing I need, but it's not slow either.
You're like, I'll know it when I find it.
Yeah, when I find the Goldilocks pacing of a show, I'll instantly know it. But yeah, I was talking about this after I watched it, but I really think that I would love to find some rip of this movie and watch it in 1.5 speed. Mm-hmm. I think it would cut down literally probably, I don't know, how long is it, like 2 hours or like an hour and a half?
It's an hour and a half. So, I mean, thankfully it's pretty short. But
it'd cut a half an hour off. It would be an episode. It'd be an episode of a modern television show. And I think that is the length that this movie could be, because there's shots in this movie that literally are like 30 seconds for zero reason. Like, I found myself watching, thinking like, oh, maybe something in the background, because of course now in modern day television and movies, we're all trained to like look for Easter eggs and like look around the screen. If the screen is hovering, something needs to be shown. That is not the case with this movie.
It just lingers.
Yeah, it just lingers way too long, and I get it's to show off the effort that was put into the shots and the puppets, but by modern day standards, it just feels clunky 100% of the time, all the way throughout.
It's definitely clunky, and I think, like we said, that is down to the editing and the pacing and the writing. And I think we do really need to talk about, because there are plenty of positives with this movie as well. And again, it's with the technical aspect, it's with the puppets, it's with the set design, the plants, the creatures.
The way they move is really cool. even when all the puppets are walking in groups, they all have different mannerisms.
Yeah.
Like there was a scene where they were all the villains. I forget what they're called, but the evil
The
side.
Skeksis.
Yeah, they were all walking together, and one had a limp, like, and one had kind of this like lean to the side. It's amazing. That part of this movie, watching it, is awesome. 100%. Just not enough for me.
It is very rare when I can watch a movie now, let alone one that came out. Actually, this is the 40th anniversary this year for this film.
Oh, good for us for watching it.
Yeah, I mean, happy anniversary, Dark Crystal. Wish you were a little bit better. But it's very rare when I can watch a movie, especially something from this time period, where I don't know how they did some of what they did.
Still, some of it's really crazy.
Some of it is, like, it blows my mind that the puppeteering is that freaking good. Like, I still can't tell if the Skeksis are people inside of a suit and they're controlling everything, or if they're, arms underneath the stage. There is this sequence in this movie where it's in the Podling village, which is where the girl Gelfling is from. There's that little party they're throwing, and there's 50 to 60 puppets in there.
Yeah, all doing their own thing.
Like, it blows your mind, just because we don't see puppets in films anymore. I mean, we get some robotic animatronic puppets, like the newer Star Wars films.
Puppet, yeah.
But not where it's like the Muppets, because this is Jim Henson's production company, who's responsible for the Muppets and Fraggle Rock and some of the best puppeteer work of all time, and obviously Sesame Street as well. But just absolutely blows your mind how good these are.
Yeah, and I think there's also some shots in the movie that really lend to not understanding how things done, because there's puppets moving and they're not touching anything. It's just so expertly done where they hide wherever the controls come up or wherever the person's arm is. Mm-hmm. It's all hidden in such a way, partly due to where they place the camera, that it really, some of the stuff is you can definitely lose yourself in the immersion that they're not puppets if you let yourself. It's very realistic in that sense. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very impressive. And I think I want to know, because this came out 2 years after The Empire Strikes Back, which I remember there's some sort of story where George Lucas didn't know how he wanted to do Yoda. And I think puppets were on the table, but he never felt the puppets reached a good point. And then Jim Henson proved that they could do Yoda. And then Frank Oz, who's the co-director of this and one of the puppeteers in the movie, did Yoda in such an incredible way. And I think that the Dagobah sequences with Yoda showed the studio system that a full puppet movie could work. And I want to say there's some sort of connection here.
I don't want to say it didn't work. I mean, they made a movie. There is no doubt about it. It's a full, cohesive film. That's why we're critiquing it, because it is a movie. It's not like they flopped so hard it's not even a movie.
Exactly.
They did it. It's possible. Mm-hmm. And I get it. It's the, I always say this about different genres, but it's the end game of puppet movies. Absolutely. I mean, it absolutely is, no question.
It's becoming our version of, this is the Dark Souls of shooters type thing.
It's the end game of, it's the end game of Hallmark. It's the end game of puppet movies. But it really is. This will never be done again. And if it is, it will not be done to the same scale or the same purity.
It won't be done again after The Age of Resistance, the show.
Yes.
The show is mostly puppets.
Yes, but again, it does use CGI also. So I'm saying, already, it's not being done in the pure form that this movie was, where it's 100% puppets. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is absolutely the masterclass. This is what anyone that wants to get into puppeteering, God forbid, this is what you should watch on how to do that.
If you haven't watched this yet, then if you're trying to get into puppeteering and you haven't seen this, that's a crime. I'm pretty sure.
You're probably not meant to be a puppeteer if you haven't seen The Dark Crystal yet. I'm sorry to tell you here on the podcast. But
there is one thing I wanted to bring up, and I think that, I hate using this as an excuse all the time, but this may have been one of those things where generationally we missed the boat. It almost kind of feels like maybe something for those of you who haven't watched Star Wars, kind of feel going into watching Star Wars now that you're an adult, right? You don't have that same feeling. I feel like you and I would have had a more nostalgic feeling for this movie, maybe rated it a little bit higher if we had originally seen this when we were kids.
Well, into that point, I always get in trouble with friends because my favorite movies are not the original trilogy, because I didn't grow up watching them.
Yeah.
So that's like blasphemy to a lot of people. But again, it's just because I don't have that nostalgia sense to them. Those movies feel slow to me and they feel dated because they are. And I totally can respect, just like with The Dark Crystal, going to the theater and watching this was probably mind blowing, just like
Oh
it
yeah.
was to watch Star Wars for the first time with those practical effects. Nothing was done on scale to that level
Yeah.
before. So I get that. But yeah, maybe we did just miss the boat. Like, I didn't watch it as a kid, or it wasn't like a family movie, so I don't care. But it just doesn't come together in this one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like there's obviously a respect for the craft, and I think the main like one of my main kind of things I was thinking about today is just that if I was in the theater, when I was like 12 to 15 and saw this movie in 1982, this would have blown my mind. Like, and it would it would have been something that was among favorite films. I know the other movie that's sort of like this is Labyrinth, which is with
Oh,
David
with David
Bowie.
Bowie. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one is a lot more well loved than this movie is, and it's kind of similar. I believe there's puppets in Labyrinth,
But not 100. It's not.
but not
That's not the
100%.
purpose of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, unless some of you think David Bowie was a puppet, but I don't know.
Used by the media. Am I right? I have no basis for that claim. I have. No...
Oh boy, we're going to a weird place already. Anyhow, but I mean that's really about it for this film. I think that is there anything else that you kind of wanted to talk about with Dark Crystal? Because I feel like we kind of hit everything.
Yeah, it just doesn't come together in the way that, like, if I had to, I was thinking about this while you were talking right now, but if I had to give this, like, a feeling, it feels like watching a ventriloquist at a professional level, but you can see their mouth moving. And you're like, like, I get it. Like, it's good, but I can tell that it's just not perfect. Like, it's still just not a complete show. And that's how I felt watching it. Like, I felt like, yes, I understand it's amazing to watch, but I couldn't necessarily fully lose myself because I was always looking at the quality, so it didn't feel like I ever got totally immersed in the world because I was so focused on these elaborate puppets. Like, I could see the behind the scenes the whole time, I felt. Except for a couple shots that I don't know how they did, and that's kind of what I'm referencing, is like, I feel like I knew the secret sauce the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then it didn't do anything to elevate that. It's like it showed me its hand, and then the rest of the movie existed.
That's a totally fair argument. So, going off of that, as your first time watching this movie, what would be your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, what I always say is I'm always for people pushing boundaries of film, and this definitely did. This exists because somebody was willing to put it out there. I feel like A24 would produce this movie if it was made now. Like, just the Mad Lib. They're like, it's puppets, and it's magic, and it's little people, and it's like just all this stuff. And they would make it, and it would be, I'm sure it would be loved by people today. But from when it came out, it was pushing a ton of boundaries, and I have to respect that, but it pushed boundaries in a way that just didn't land anywhere. Like, they made the jump, and it just fell flat for me. So because of that, I gave it a 32.
Wow, alrighty. Yeah, I think for me, I said, as far as my final thoughts, I said, with its beautiful production design, puppeteering, and voice acting, it's a shame that the film isn't quite as interesting or as engaging as it wants to be. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier that I did enjoy it a bit more than you did, but I still kind of had to take some points off just because it is kind of boring through most of it. So I did give it a 52.
That seems
fair. That's kind of the most critical score I can give of it. But that is going to bring us to an end for that. And now we're going to be moving on to the second film, which
Real
is...
quick, though,
yeah.
if you're afraid of puppets, this is not the movie for you. I'll just say that.
Did you know? It's like if you're afraid of clowns, then watch it.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you're afraid of puppets, don't watch it. But that's going to bring us to the second movie for today, which is The Objective. Released in 2008, it was directed by Daniel Myrick and stars Jonas Ball, Matthew R. Anderson, and John Huertas. A military special operations team led by a CIA case officer are on a mission in the harsh and hostile terrain of Afghanistan, where they find themselves in a Middle Eastern Bermuda Triangle of ancient evil.
Great description.
That is the official IMDb synopsis there.
Great description.
But I guess I'll share my overall quick general thoughts because this was my first time watching it.
Sure.
First off, this movie is hard to watch. And I mean that not in the way you think. You can't rent this movie. You have to buy this movie or subscribe to AMC Plus or IFC Films through Amazon Prime to watch this movie.
Or Hulu. You can also do that. You can do it through Hulu.
You can do it through Hulu, and I think through Apple as well.
And if you have any of those live TV subscriptions, it's included. Like if you have Hulu Live, it's in there.
Oh, well, then there you go, which I don't.
But then you're paying those TV prices. So yeah, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult to actually get a hang of this movie, which I would have been much more like forgiving if the movie was good. Like, don't get me wrong, this movie I think is very, very original. The idea behind this movie is incredibly original. It's I was talking to someone else about this before the show today, and I said that it was really reminding me of the movie Underwater, which we had reviewed earlier, where it's an original concept put into a movie that is subpar. And it just kind of bugs me, because I feel like if this had some more money behind it, and maybe some better actors, it would have been a lot better. But what are your general thoughts before we kind of go into spoilers?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this movie literally when it came out. I rented it from a Blockbuster when it came out.
Wow.
Like, it was on my Friday trip with my dad to Blockbuster. The previous week we'd watched Sunshine. We were like, The Objective, let's check it out, by the people that did Blair Witch. Brought it home. That's the big thing, too. It's also by the people that did the Blair Witch Project. Yeah, one of the people. So, similar, like, handheld vibe to the whole movie. Or at least they try to make it that kind of vibe.
And I'll get there when I start talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie, I give it a ton more props than the last film. Props not meaning puppets. Props meaning respect. I give it a lot more respect because I feel like for the previous film, The Dark Crystal, they knew the talent they had and that's all they banked on. This movie tries a lot of things. It definitely is trying to push the boundaries of its genre for the time. They were trying things that I feel were very unique and unusual and kind of mysterious at times. And I actually really enjoyed a lot of the story. I don't know if the payoff justifies the means, but I enjoy it.
Alrighty, well, before we dive into spoilers, as we mentioned earlier, this movie is a bitch to get a hang of, but if you do want to watch it, you do have to have an AMC Plus or IFC Films subscription through Hulu or Amazon or Apple, where you can get that from, and then you can stream it. All of those should have a free trial period, which is how I did it. I just got the free trial and canceled it. Yeah, I was like, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. The only other things that IFC has on there that I would want to watch are Human Centipede, so other than that, that's about it.
Want to watch it. Fascinating.
That's why I said would want to watch it. I just have to have a couple glasses of wine or something. But let's go ahead and dive into full spoilers for The Objective. And I think it is worth it to mention the original quality of this movie is kind of the biggest highlight I think we both have. The actual storyline, what it is that is out in the desert that these people are hunting. That is where the original quality comes in.
Yeah, and I think some of the I don't want to say like the gimmicks that they use, but the tricks that they use to make this movie feel bigger, to me, some of them really work, and then some of them don't. Like, kind of getting into some of the, like, I guess the parts that don't work is that all of the nighttime shots in this movie are filmed in broad daylight with a low light filter on it. And I don't know if you went back and looked at screenshots or stills from the nighttime. You can totally tell it is like noon. Yeah. and I mean, they did the best with what they could. Again, this is a super low budget film. Do you know what the budget was?
I don't. I didn't look it up.
Let me see. I'm just going to look real quick. But
while you're looking that up, it feels like they literally got a couple of cheap actors out to the desert to shoot a movie in 5 days in the middle of Death Valley,
or over the weekend,
or like over the weekend. This movie, yeah. But you have a very surprised look on your face.
You want to guess how much?
Why do I feel like it's gonna be higher than I really think it is? I'm gonna say the budget was $10 million.
Oh no, okay, it was $4 million.
What? Why? Where did it go?
That's to travel expenses.
Like, did they actually go to Afghanistan or something? Like, what?
They must have, yeah.
Like, we spent $3 million getting everything to Afghanistan. What do we have left? $1 million. Okay. Well, and then that's when the director starts shitting his pants because he's like, "Oh, what the fuck are we gonna do for the rest of this movie? How is it for?"
I don't know why, but on the Numbers website, it says theatrical performance. It says the domestic box office is $95. Somebody. What? Yeah. Oh, it only released in one theater. What?
What? Was it like?
It released in one theater on February 6, 2009, and it made $95.
Oh my gosh! They didn't even take the director didn't even take it to multiple theaters.
Not according to the Numbers. I don't know any. I can't verify any of this, but
what website are you on?
thenumbers.com, where data and the movie business meet.
Oh, I haven't heard of the Numbers. Box Office Mojo is usually the one that I have checked before, but
yeah, I mean, clearly that's way expensive. So it must have.
Did the director embezzle the money? Like, what happened?
He just took $4 million. No, on Box Office Mojo, opening $95 in one theater, worldwide.
Real quick, can you look up the movie Repo: The Genetic Opera? I want to see how much that made.
What?
Because it has a. I'll explain why. Because
okay, go ahead.
So the director
he made. The movie do you want to know how much it made
in box office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Domestically or worldwide?
Domestic.
Domestic was 146,000.
That still makes sense. Yeah.
In 8 theaters.
Yeah, because he took it to colleges and screened the film, and so I was like, maybe that's what the director of The Objective did. Was he just took it to one theater? But the fact that it was a $95 oh my, that's one of the worst flops I think I've ever heard.
Well, I don't know if it's a flop. I don't think it was really released. I think this is a straight to DVD, and I think that one showing is opening night or like a critics viewing.
Which this
they charged the critics. They charged the to review the movie,
which is why it has a low Metacritic rating.
Yeah, they're like, I had to pay to watch it.
But
yeah, but I mean, it's certainly. I guess it's not. I guess we can't say it's low budget because I guess they probably traveled. I would assume they actually. That's why the budget is what it is for that whole crew. But there's a couple tricks that they use, and it's a lot of suspension of disbelief, which I think works better in the Blair Witch Project because of the limited technology they have with them. Like, the scenario makes sense in the Blair Witch Project. In this movie, these are I think literally it's supposed to be the military's most advanced stealth team.
No, it's just some Delta Squad or something.
Well, Delta Force is really elite in the military.
Or then they never really explain. They're just here's a military squad. These are some rough and tough guys. They're gonna get out there in Afghanistan. They're gonna mess your shit up.
And this movie does commit the kind of a big sin for me, which is that it tells you instead of shows you 90% of the movie.
Yes.
They have the main character, I guess you could say, voicing over Apocalypse Now style, where he's like, "We've been in the desert for 2 days now. I'm not sure if my hand is real." And you're like, okay. He's literally, I don't know if that's a quote, but that probably could be. You could probably
walking up this hillside, stuck in the sun. Did I leave the oven on at home? Is my wife cheating on me?
Yeah, that's literally exactly what they talk about.
Random, my gosh.
They use that, he tells you how deadly this squad is. He's like, anyone would tell you that any of these men would rather die than be picked last to go on a mission. And it's like, well, how about you show us how determined they are?
Yeah.
Why? You're just literally telling us that this is how they act. Yeah. And then they just complain the time. But real quick, some of the tricks I liked are the fear of things not seen. I think one of the things that happens is when the car headlights are coming down the road and they split off, terrifying. I would probably die if I saw that happen in real life.
Just what?
Just pass out. And then the helicopter scene where it's literally right overhead. And then it's just gone. I think they really played into that. You don't know what's going on, so that's scary. And I think that worked. I think stuff like that was really, really interesting to see.
That, and then there's also the firefight at night when the two guys run towards the triangle and they just evaporate. And then
crazy shot. Oh, that's the $4 million. That CGI.
That one moment.
That's where that all went.
But I feel like this is one of those movies where they had those moments. And those moments made up 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And they're like, we have an hour and 20 minutes we need to fill. Do you mean we actually have to write dialogue? And we have, like, what if we have them stuck in the same place over and over again, talking about, oh, the water's getting even lower, and making dialogue that I don't give a shit about? I didn't care about any of these characters.
And then also everything of importance, which is a stylistic choice. I don't actually want to fault this, but everything that they do happens off screen. Like everything of importance happens again in the unknown space.
Yeah.
But like I think it starts off really nicely. I think the setup's actually pretty good. And then I think they start off really light where they get into that big firefight, but then there's no other bodies. And I think that was a pretty cool way to start off. Like, this is strange. Like, they killed people on the other side, but there's no bodies anywhere. And you're kind of just like, that's pretty strange. And then the whole thing where the guy that ends up getting shot, he passes away, but then his body's just, like, gone completely. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. I mean, I think they tried a lot of cool stuff. The payoff just doesn't really land. I think the final scene is pretty weak, and I bet it cost them, like, $10 to make.
When he's in the Oasis or when he's in the hospital room?
Oh, the final scene I thought was what do I think about that? I thought it was gimmicky, but I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Where he's in the hospital bed?
Well, yeah.
I thought that was horrendous. I thought, like,
you hated it.
if this person, like, so when he's at the Oasis and he's lying there and he's like passing in and out, right? And then that, whatever, it's like some sort of mythical, warrior thing, right? Comes up and touches his head, right? He's been chosen, whatever. It would have been so cool if this maybe would have been a bigger budget movie, but he, like, walks back to the military camp and he's, like, bathed in light or something like that and just waves his hands and things are destroyed, like, trying to put an end to conflict. Like, that would have been so much cooler.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been really cool.
And it would have made this movie even better. But it was just him, like, it would have been even more meme worthy. If someone can edit this, I will die laughing. Is when he's lying there, like, floating over the bed and he's, like, comatose and he has the airplane model in his hand. If it's actually, like, someone edits it to be like Rubik's Cube and he's, like, solving it with one hand. He's like, I have attained intelligence far beyond any of you mortals. And he just, like, solves a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, I think this movie should be redone. I really think it's a solid concept. Yeah. I just don't think it was executed well, and I think, like, actually, what I picture this movie could be very similar to is The Signal. I can see a very similarly budgeted film being made, but based off of this concept, and I think it would be really good. Especially with all the war movies. Huh?
Or a similar concept, because this really reminds me of the SCP online stories. Where, like, a military group goes out to find this thing that's, like, an anomaly. They have to try and contain it, find it, whatever. It's straight out of SCP. And if you redid this, you could make it into an SCP style. I've been pushing for years, excuse me, that the SCP stories need to be turned into a cinematic universe. Because
I know you can buy the books with all of them, with all the different like creatures.
Which, like, they should make it into a cinematic universe. And something like this could be the jumping off point.
Yeah, I agree. And I honestly, I think the objective would make a great first-person survival video game. I feel like the concept of sending transmissions to an unknown person and having that inner dialogue coming on and being like, whoever's reading these, I hope this is what you want. And I really did like the dialogue. See, there were two quotes I really liked. One was, the only way you can tell what decade it is here is by the color of the soldiers' uniforms. That was a really cool line. And then the other one was when you actually find out what the objective is. And he goes, our objective is to find this thing. Their objective is to see what happens when we do. Like, when you find out that everyone is expendable. The mission was to just get in contact with it. And they don't care what it takes. So I thought that was pretty cool. I liked a lot of the stuff, again, kind of that building mystery where they're, like, are looking at the map and they go, we're right here, but what is that huge mountain? It's not on the map, and I really did like all those little things. I feel like they didn't overdo it on any of those.
No, I feel like it just was underdone.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It needed to get bigger. It felt like the beginning. It needed to keep ramping up, and it just never really.
Yeah, it
fully
felt like
took
every time
off.
something happened, it just went right back to them just sitting on a hillside, tired, and in the sun, and just waiting because nothing was happening.
I did like the scene where they showed that the main guy, had extra water the whole time.
Which
I
is
thought that was
weird,
kind of a neat
which is
little
a
reveal.
plot hole though, because everyone else's water turned to sand, including his.
But see, the aliens didn't know he had a canteen.
It doesn't matter if they took all the moisture and made it into sand. Then that just didn't make any sense. It's a little betrayal reveal, which was but like it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, and also I feel like they just maybe it needed to be longer and better. Obviously, they needed more budget and they needed a better refined plan. But for a one theater release movie on a shoestring budget that's just looks like it's travel, I feel like it's a worthwhile movie. If you like super indie films that are really trying kind of new stuff, this feels like an A++ college project is what it feels like.
Yeah. Not to mention, I do need to bring up the awful visual effects sequence when their Afghanistan guide throws himself off the cliff. And it looks like something out of a 50s movie. It's so bad looking.
So what definitely happened for this movie is they were like, hey, we got to keep it low budget. And then they were like, hey, my son can do CGI. And he's like, oh, really? And they just hired the neighbor kid to do
it would have been cheaper to get a mannequin from a Salvation Army and put
just
it in
throw
the
it off
same
a cliff.
clothes and throw it off the cliff. So at least looked like it was taking place on the same part of the film and not layered over. Like the mountains in the front were moving because the image wasn't still. And oh my God, it was so bad. I laughed out loud when I saw it.
You know what I want? I'm thinking about it right now. What I want is I want someone to intersplice this movie where the triangle ships are Thanos' ships. And when the two guys run up towards it, you have to line it up with the snap. And that's why they disappeared.
Everything goes back to Avengers here. You gotta love it.
The objective is now canon MCU. It'll be on Disney Plus next year in IMAX enhanced mode. So it's going to be great.
Are you saying that the CIA agent is actually Nova? Whoa.
We need a second movie. We need The Objective also is the second movie.
The Objective, that's right. Again.
Yeah, again. That's literally it. Yes, we're making it again.
Before I get my final thoughts, this is the kind of movie I expect from Sci-Fi Channel. The kind that would be on during the middle of the day, like Sharknado or Velocipaster or something like that. But this at least was more serious than all of those. Which
it tried more than just resting on a gimmick. I think it definitely tried to be something.
Very similar to Underwater, but I would highly recommend Underwater over this.
Yeah, bigger budget though. I think this movie just needed more budget. I think it just needed more funds thrown at it and more resources.
I'm amazed the co-director of Blair Witch Project didn't get more money because Blair Witch Project was a huge success.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a direct Blair Witch sequel, so I'm sure pitching it was difficult.
It's the same director. The trailer has one from the co-director of Blair Witch Project in it.
Maybe he was the lesser co-director.
I don't know. I didn't get as much credit as the other person did. But that's
$95. That's crazy.
On a $4 million budget. My business degree is showing. I'm very upset that that's the return.
Can you imagine the guy coming in from the financial? All right, James, how'd we do? Boss, it's not good.
I'm going to need you to sit down. I've already poured you a stiff old-fashioned. Now, go ahead and just drink that whole thing real quick, and then let me tell you.
We're going to have to sell the animals.
Man. Sell the animals? What? We got to sell the herd of goats. Pay for this movie again.
That's so funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm cool. I liked watching a deep cut, kind of like super indie old school movie. It was super fun to go back and watch it.
Indie in 2008. I feel like indie has a much better connotation now.
I'd agree, but I'm saying indie in this, or maybe like a just unknown, like a movie that just didn't take off. I had a really good time watching it.
Very good point. Well, let's go over our final thoughts, and then we can give a score, and we'll be good. Since this is my first time watching, I said that while its concept is original and its setting makes for great tension, the film just has a very cheap feel to it, and for being something so original, it's just not even more so than Dark Crystal. I'd say it's just not engaging. It's not interesting, and sometimes it's very cringeworthy. Unfortunately, but because of that, I gave the objective a 24. Not my lowest score ever, but I would much rather watch this than like Land of the Lost or a lot of the other films that we've reviewed that have been lower. But it's just it was so cheap. It was just so poorly made. And I also want, before you think, I just remember my other point. I do think this was originally a longer movie at some point, and I think it was a found footage movie because there's points when the camera feels like the cameraman is supposed to be there. Like he's moving around, like following people with the shot, and it doesn't work because there's no other footage that sets that up. I feel like they did edit it to be more of a theatrical film and not like Blair Witch 2.
Yeah, and I would imagine that they felt that the found footage aspect just didn't quite work. And that they took it out. But I would 100% agree that there are shots that feel like the camera person was talking. Like that they were in the conversation. And then they kind of cut that out or muted that audio stream. But
I would say if they do remake this film, if they do make it again, you can do it all the same way. Make it a found footage movie, but do body cam and helmet cam footage from the soldiers and make it feel more real.
Yeah, and make it feel like, don't have the camera make those, I talked about it before, but those unrealistic camera moves. Like, make a whole movie with just those camera angles.
Yeah.
Even if they're talking and the camera's pointed at the ground, that's cool. Like, that feels like you found the footage. Like, it doesn't have to be like, you don't talk to someone with your gun camera body, like, pointed at someone. So that's cool.
Hey, Jim, how are you feeling at this moment?
Yeah. And it's cool if the gun covers the camera. Like, that's all gritty and that's all real. And I think it would make a way better movie if they did that. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think this movie tried a lot of things. It had more to it than I remember from when I was a kid. It definitely felt like, I don't know, I want to say worse because I don't remember it being like an amazing movie, but it definitely felt like I could see through a lot more of it. But I also don't think it was terrible. I always try to show respect, just like I did for the Dark Crystal. I try to honor the effort made in pushing boundaries. And I think this movie tried a lot of things. I wish I could make a movie this good, to be honest. I don't think I could, but I feel like this is an A++ college performance, like I said. And I feel like this definitely would win out of the classroom, I'd imagine. So because of that, I gave it the exact same score as the Dark Crystal.
Which is?
It's 32?
32, okay.
If I didn't, whatever I gave the Dark Crystal is what I gave this movie.
Alrighty, well then I'll make sure to edit that in, as I usually do. It'll be right down here somewhere.
But I felt like they were very different movies, but the same engagement, same interest. Like they just they balanced each other out on the scales. Like one was more interesting, one was more boring, but had better this, had worse this. So I just feel like they're very, very equal in my eyes.
Sure. Well, that is going to bring us to an end for two movies that don't have a lot in common. They had a lot in common when it came to scores and how we felt about them. But, Adrian, if anyone out there who is listening or watching to this, for the love of all that's out there, if they don't know where to find us yet, we say it every week, but where can they find us?
The Drive Back Podcast. If you're watching us here on YouTube and you can see us, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and then hit the bell. We post every Monday, as well as out-of-cycle posts that are only here on YouTube. We have an MCU tier list review that we just did, and we're really looking forward to doing more of those. That was super fun. The Drive Back Podcast on any podcasting app, any 5-star reviews as well are greatly appreciated. That is the number one way for podcasts to grow, are those reviews. So all those are greatly appreciated. I know we got one really recently. Who was it, Garrett? I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
Who gave us a review is Mark.
Mark, yes, thank you very much. That's always super, super appreciated, so thank you very much for your generous review. And then if you want to be up to date on what we're posting, what we're watching, what we're launching, or what we're even recording, Instagram at the Drive Back Podcast is the best place to do that. We always post whenever we have new episodes, so check us out there and give us a follow, and that way you will always know what's up to date and whether you want to watch the episode or not.
Exactly. A great way to keep in touch with us as well. Send us your recommendations. But next week, we've got a special Valentine's Day episode, and we'll be watching Valentine's Day.
The world famous prequel to New Year's Eve.
The Infinity War of Hallmark movies.
Which should mean better movie. Controversial.
Probably not. We'll see. But anyhow, that's going to be next week. I believe Valentine's Day is on Hulu?
I think it's on Hulu, yeah. Same as New Year's Eve, I believe.
But that is going to be the next movie, so grab your loved ones, hold them close, and hold them close in fear that
seemed like a threat. Yeah. Protect your family.
Protect your family, because Valentine's Day is coming. But that's going to bring us to an end for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We love you all so much. We will see you next week here on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.